Hi, Michael Bettine, back after a bit of a break. In today's video, I want to talk about mallet grips, and what I see are a lot of fallacies that people have about mallet grips. I have done some videos on mallet grips before, but after a recent Facebook sort of controversy on one of the Gong forums, I think this really needs to be addressed. If you know me at all, have watched any of my videos or studied with me or anything, then you know that one of the important ideas that I hold on to is that everything is fluid. There is no absolute anything. And the minute you say, this is the way, this is the only way of doing something, you're basically wrong, especially in working with sound. Because there are too many variables in this whole equation of doing things. And everybody is different. I think that's the most important thing to realize. We are all different. I am me. You are you. I can never be you. You can never be me. There's a lot of differences there. So let's just jump into this. So like I said, there's a popular gong forum on Facebook. I'm not even going to name it because if you know anything about this, you'll know where to look. And they posted a video of my good friend Jens Zuga from Germany. He's off teaching in China, some workshops, and they posted a video of him and his students playing with what I call the Jens grip, which is the way he teaches. Let me grab a mallet here. Jens's grip is just to put the mallet here. You sort of grab it with your last two fingers, and it's fairly loose in your hand. And the idea of how Jens plays is he can bounce it off the gong, multiple strokes. And in many ways, it's a very soft sounding grip because this mallet is loose in there. That's not at all the way I play. I play a completely different grip. And there's two reasons I don't play the Jens grip. One is because I've been playing the grip that I use for ever, since I started playing drums, because it's basically a drumming grip, a percussion grip. I've been trained in that all through high school, university, taking private lessons with people, and then playing percussion for over 50 years. So why would I change to this? I do use this on occasion. Once in a while I will use it for certain strokes, but it is not my main grip. Probably I might use it 0.0005% of the time. I don't use it very often, but I will use it. And I will say it's a legitimate grip. There is nothing wrong with this grip. Okay? And obviously this works for Jens and works for hundreds, if not thousands, of other gong players. There's nothing wrong with it. If you play this way, great. If it works for you, do it. Now let's get into my grip. Again, I said I'm a percussionist, a lifelong percussionist, just about. And I use a percussion grip, which is more holding it here with the thumb on the shaft. And if you can see this, I can move it this way with the fingers, or I can move it with the wrist. And if I really needed to, I could move it with the arm, which is basically unnecessary. But I play with this type of grip. Yes, it's a little more rigid, but I feel it has much more control. This, to me, is floppy. I don't have any control here. And that's just my personal opinion based on how I was brought up and taught as a percussionist and how I've played all these years. To me, this has absolutely no control. The fulcrum is down here. If you've studied any science, the fulcrum is like at a playground, on the teeter-totter, seesaw, whatever you want to call it. The fulcrum is like here. Here's the fulcrum. Okay, so in a mallet grip of any type, you have to have a fulcrum somewhere. You have to grip it. This tends to be the bottom finger or the bottom two fingers, leaving the rest really not touching. And to me, it doesn't have a lot of control, at least for the way I am used to playing. Okay, this to me has a lot of control. I can squeeze it tight. I can open it up. Just the way I've learned. I mean, it's my own personal thing. If you think of playing drums like this, either thumbs to the side or thumbs up. It's a drumming grip. And there is nothing wrong with using that on gongs and bowls and bells and everything else. Also, I can use this same grip on everything. I can use it on any size mallet. Turn my thumb there. I can use it on a big shaft like this, or if I grab something like, here's a small birch mallet, I will hold it that way. Let's find another one. Let's get a medium mallet here. What have I got? Here's a bamboo handled mallet. I can use that grip on that too. Here's a wind gong mallet with a rubber grip. I can use that grip too. The problem I find with the Yen's grip, it's great if you're just playing big gongs. Fabulous. But let's say I change my mallet. I want to go to something smaller like this. This is a horrible grip to hold a mallet like this in. It is just terrible. This is much better. To me, this is way too loose and floppy. Again, I have no control. Now let's get that small birch mallet, like a vibe mallet, marimba mallet, or in this case, this is a medium rubber mallet. To try to hold it like that by my pinky, I barely have any grip. I have to really just clench my whole fingers around it. No control. Here, I've got control. That's my own personal opinion. That's the way I play. That's the way I've played for, again, well over 50 years. You might disagree with it, and that's fine, but I'm just saying, if I play the thumb on the mallet shaft grip, I can use it for any size, any type of mallet. I could even use it for like a singing bowl wand. Can you imagine holding a singing bowl wand like this? No, it doesn't work. Got to have your thumb on it. Or I tend to play it this way. Okay. So let's look at some of the comments here. I printed out a couple pages, but I'm not going to read everything. But I think it's important to address this thing because to me, the important thing is find the grip that works for you. When I teach in videos, in person, I talk about all the different grips that people use. I talk about the Yen's grip, and I show people that, and I tell them, go home and try it. If it works for you, that is great. Make that your main grip. I show them my grip, the thumb on the shaft grip, and I say, try this one too. Those are the two main gong mallet grips. Find the one that you are most comfortable with, that fits your hand, fits your body mechanics, that you like. And then use that and work with it, practice with it, develop it. Personally, I don't care what grip you play. I just want you to be comfortable and to just make music. Now thinking about drums and the drum grip. There are such a wide variety of variations of the basic drumming grip. Some people, like I said, play thumbs to the side, thumbs up, maybe just thumbs kind of halfway. Some people do grip more by the back, kind of the Jens method. Tony Williams, the great jazz drummer, was big on doing that. Some people grip the drumstick between the thumb and the first finger. Some people grip it more between the thumb and the second, or between the thumb and both. It all depends on what you are comfortable with. And there are books and methods and videos and all these grips out there from very famous drummers and teachers who are successful with them. And I would do the same with my drum students. I'd show them different grips and I'd say, go try this one, try that one. What works for you? I don't care what grip you use. Find one that works and develop it. Everything is fluid. Everybody is different. I have very large hands. I have very strong arms. I like big, heavy mallets with long handles. I feel I can control them better. I also realize there are a lot of people with smaller hands, might not be as muscular, smaller build, shorter than me. They like more delicate mallets, less weight, shorter handle. Great. Works for them. Find the mallets you like. Find the grip, find the mallets, work with it. And you may come up with your own variation on grips too. If it works for you, go with it. Again, everybody's built differently. Everybody's hands are different. So don't let somebody just tell you, that's wrong. You have to do it this way. This is the only way. This is the best way, and we'll make the best sound. And you're wrong if you don't use that method. Don't. I won't say that to anybody. Because, like I said, everything's fluid. So let me get to some of this. I had written that there were more than one grip, and, you can't just say that this is the best and only an absolute grip. And the reply was, Michael Bettine, in order to produce the most beautiful way a gong can sound, you need to manage to stroke with an impact-free noise. We're going to talk about that a lot. The thumb-off technique is the ideal way to do this. Thumbs on make the mallet stiff, and you can hear that instantly. We believe that especially drummers are having a hard time unlearning their drumming. Gongs are no drums. Okay, well, I'm going to have a lot to say about this, so I hope you're ready. A lot of my gong friends have a drumming background, and I think they are amazing gong players. I think coming to the gongs from the drums gives you such an advantage because you already have a lot of technique. Yes, it does need to be modified some because these instruments are very different. In drumming, we are used to mostly playing on the horizontal plane, where in gongs, we are playing on the vertical plane. There needs to be some modification there. But to say that, drummers have to unlearn drums, yes. You have to unlearn the idea of drumming. And I've explained this in many videos out there about how playing drums is very different than playing gongs in a musical sense. Where drums, we play just this continuum of notes through time. Where gongs, it's like, we can hit a gong and the note expands and blooms and opens and lingers and then decays. Drums are very short sounds. Gongs are very long sounds. Drummers need to unlearn that aspect of playing very short sounds. But as far as using a drumming grip and being a drummer, being a percussionist, no, we don't have to unlearn anything. We have an advantage because we already have technique. We already know how to play. And if if you've actually studied drumming with a good teacher, you will learn that drumming is not banging into the drum or the cymbal. It's hitting it and coming off of it. It's drawing the sound out of the instrument. It's not, it's coming off of it. Self-taught rock drummers, nothing against them, but yes, many self-taught rock drummers tend to play more into the drums. They may have to unlearn that into the drum thing and learn to pull off the gong. Not a big deal. I'm sure they can do it. But as drummers and percussionists, yeah, we learn how to bring the sound out of whatever instrument we are playing and bring the best sound for the situation. In the case of the gongs, singing bowls, bells, whatever, bringing out a very beautiful sound. So no, I think drummers are some of the best gong players out there because, again, we've come to these instruments with years of experience that readily transfers into playing them. But that's not to say that people who've never played drums or never even played an instrument can't be really great gong players. They can. Just different approaches. I just think if you're a drummer, you have a head start because you've got all that experience behind you that transfers. That's all. Doesn't make drummers better. It just, I think, puts drummers further along the path because they can bring all that experience. Next to that would be people who play other musical instruments, whether you play piano or flute or guitar or whatever. I think having a musical background, or even singers, having a musical background, experience playing with other musicians, possibly performing on stage, whether it's just like in school or you've been in a band and playing out in clubs or whatever, having that experience, I think that gives you a head start because you have that musicality that transfers into your gong playing. You can bring that right away. And I have a lot of friends who play different instruments, violin, piano, other things, and they are gong players. I think they are really much better gong players because they have that musical background. And then we can have total noobs who've never played an instrument come to the gongs, and they can learn how to play the gongs and do wonderful things and make great sounds. So this is not a hierarchy. I'm not trying to put things in a hierarchy. I'm just saying that experience-wise, I think it helps for people with any sort of musical training. They can transfer that training into playing the gongs. And that's it. So let's look at a little more of this thing here because I think it's, I really disagree with a lot. Okay, let's talk about impact-free noise. In all my playing, in all my sessions, in all my concerts, and everything I've done with the gongs, I have never had anyone come up to me and complain about, I heard impact noise. I heard your mallets clicking on the gongs or something. No one has ever said anything about that. And I use the thumb on the mallet grip. I think that's sort of a poor argument because there's so many factors into having impact noise. One is the type of mallet you use. Okay? Got a big puffy mallet here, a lot of padding, or even a smaller puffy mallet like this. You should get less impact noise just because it's big and puffy and padded. Same thing with, I got all kinds of mallets here. Okay, here's a bigger marimba mallet, bass marimba mallet, yarn wound, but it's very soft. You should get less sort of contact noise. Now here's a bass drum mallet. It has the fur on it, and you would think, this is going to be really soft, but it's actually a rather hard mallet underneath. So this will give you a little more, perhaps, impact noise. It will give you a more staccato, bright sound, more articulate sound, however you want to describe it. So mallet choice has a really defining element in impact sound. The other part is, how do you play? Do you play into the gong? Just kind of smack it? Do you play off of the gong? And with, what type of force do you use? Even with a padded mallet, how are you hitting it? Are you hitting the gong more at an angle like this, on the edge of the mallet? Are you hitting it square on? And then even where are you hitting it? Let's look at the Jupiter here. Are you hitting it in the center, which is much stiffer? Are you hitting it on the edge, which will open up easier? All these things you have to take into consideration when you're talking about impact noise. I mean, there's just no one situation that fits everything with impact noise. So to make a statement like this thumb on grip isn't good because you get impact noise it's erroneous. It just doesn't hold, okay? Because you can, let's find, what do we got for a harder mallet? Okay, this is a harder mallet, the wind gong mallet. It's yarn wound, it's kind of soft, but it's still a harder mallet. You could use the Jens grip in this and you're going to get impact noise because it's a harder mallet. That's just the way it is. Now the other important thing about impact noise, if you're playing gongs, where are you? If you're standing or sitting, you're right here. Okay? This is the most important thing. You're right here. You hear every sound, every little micro sound that happens. You hear it right here. Now, I'm going to come way over here and play. Any sort of impact sound dissipates quickly, unless you are playing with, let's say, a really hard mallet, like this rubber mallet, or what have I got here? I've got a hard cord wound vibe mallet. You're going to get impact sound, which I just prefer to call articulation or attack. You're going to get that from these, and it's going to stand out. But if I'm using something like this, I want that sound to stand out. Something like this, not so much. Something like this, yes, you can. But again, the idea is I'm right here. I can hear all this click, 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 however you want to describe it. But it dissipates quickly. And the attack doesn't sustain itself over distance. Not like a drum, where a drum is all attack. Just like a hand clap. You could go 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet away. It's still going to sound like that because it's all attack. So we have to look at the acoustics of everything and how that's going to work. You just can't make a full-on definitive statement and say this grip is no good because you'll get impact sound and people will hear it and people won't like it. Sometimes impact sound articulation is desirable. Sometimes I want the sound to come out more. I want to bring out more top end. I want the sound to be able to carry a little more. Articulation from the impact sound. Nothing wrong with it. And again, nobody has ever complained to me about any of my live performances or my videos and complained about, I could hear those mallets hitting your gong. Nobody has ever said that to me. Because it's not important. It's only important if you are standing next to the gong, you can hear it. very loudly because you are right there. Okay? So I don't know the background of the person who has that Facebook page and replied to me about that. I don't know their background, if they have a drumming or percussion background or not, but I don't think they know what they're talking about. Sorry. Not sorry. Okay, let's look at, and then let's just look at a couple others. I got 2 pages of responses they put out there. I just want to skim on a couple of other things. I like this one. Gongs are no drums. Well, that's a debatable thing. If you know me, you know I drum on my gongs a lot. It says gongs are of the family of idiophones, which is true. An idiophone is an instrument that is comprised of itself, like a one-piece thing. So you think of like a gong or a cymbal, a bell, something like that. But a gong can also be thought of as a membranophone. And I did a video about this. Go find my gongs and drumming video somewhere. Talking about how a gong is basically a metal frame drum. Okay? And people have argued with me about this, and I've argued back, but this is how I see it. Let me grab a frame drum. Here's a typical frame drum, an Irish bodhrán. And if we look at it, most frame drums are built this way. A piece of wood is bent into a circle, glued or nailed or whatever, and then a skin, in this case an actual, I believe it's a goat skin, is stretched across and tacked to hold it fast, and then it dries and puts tension on it. So that is a frame drum. They're found all over in like the Middle East, Northern Africa, other places like that, Ireland. It's just a basic drum. And I have a lot of these with synthetic heads because the skin heads are affected by humidity. But this is a frame drum. It's a membrane stretched over a frame. All right? Very simple design. And the membrane is stretched either if it's a real skin because it dries and tightens, or if it's a plastic head, it's put under pressure when it's put on, or it might actually have tuners like on a drum that you tighten down and stretch the skin over the frame. Very basic design. Okay, here's a small gong. It's basically the same idea. What do you have? You have a frame. The edge is hammered on a chow type gong or some others like a hang gong and a few other styles. It's hammered over and it's stiff. This is very stiff. This is like the frame on our frame drum. And then what do we have on the front? We actually have a membrane, a skin, a membrane that vibrates. And this is also hammered, which puts it under tension. So a gong is, in many ways, a metal frame drum. And if you go to Asia, in many cultures, they will call the gong a drum or a metal drum. So this is important to know. It's very much the same idea that we see in a frame drum. Wooden skin or plastic, metal. Same idea. Okay? This is really important to understand that. They are very much can be seen as the same type of instrument. Thus, they can be played the same way. So let's play some gongs. I've got 2 here that are very, very different. And this is another part of the impact or attack or articulation sound. This is my Paiste number 9 bronze gong. It is made of B8 bronze. It is very loose. This gong is very, very loose. The face, the membrane really vibrates. It's a loose feel. To me, it's a very soft gong. This is my Paiste Jupiter Planet gong. The face, to me, is very stiff. It's rather unyielding. Both 28-inch gongs, but two very different types of gongs. Nickel silver, B8 bronze, but it's even more than that, it's the actual construction and how it was hammered. You could say this is a drum where they've taken and they've tightened that head up really tight. This is a drum where they've kept that drum head fairly loose. So the playing is different, the action is different, thus the sound will be different, even with the same mallet. So let's play a few things and see if we can hear a difference. So first on this one, like I said, this is a very soft gong. It just has a really nice face that it's buttery. And you can hear that. It opened up quickly. Doesn't really take much to get this excited and to get it to bloom. Now let's look at the Jupiter gong. It's a stiffer face. Can you hear that? It's more focused. It's stiffer. I can hear more impact sound, which I call, again, articulation or staccato. Same mallet, two very different gongs. So when it comes to impact noise, whatever you want to call it, there are so many variables to it. The type of mallet, how I play it, the gong design, the type of metal the gong is made of. There are too many variables in there. I mean, I could play things softly and let's change the mallet now. Let's go to something. This is one of my favorites. This is a Chalklin GM2 medium. It's got a fairly weighty head. I like the contour of the handle. It's really nice. More articulation out of it, but again, it depends on how you hit. So there's a really soft sort of stroke. And there's a harder stroke. Now, The other part of this equation that's really important to know, if you are doing multiple strokes on the gong, is whether you are hitting the gong when it's in phase or out of phase. Now, if you talk to Thomas Orr Anderson and take one of his classes about the physics of gongs and that, there's an important thing to understand. Let's look at it. I'll use the piece of paper here to illustrate it. Here's the face of the gong. When you hit the gong, it goes like this. Okay? It's moving. So, when you are going to strike the gong a second time, it's important is where the gong is when you meet it. Is the gong here, like this? Kind of hard to get that. Okay, here, let's bend it this way. It's the gong like this, and I'm striking it here. Or is the gong like this, and I'm striking it here? If that makes sense. So how is the gong vibrating? Because the whole gong is moving, and the different modes, as Thomas would explain, have the face of the gong doing this. So which phase is it in? Is it coming towards you, or is it moving away from you as you strike it? And that determines whether you get a softer or louder impact sound on the gong. So there was a harder one, softer one, very soft. And to me, that's an extremely frustrating thing when I'm playing multiple strokes, is you can have all these nice soft ones, and then like the third or fourth one is like click, because you're striking the gong when the phase is different. Okay? I'm not a scientist. I read a lot about science, but that's the sort of things I learned from Thomas. And when I played the gongs, I realized that's what was happening. And that's why sometimes, again, repeated strokes, and suddenly you get soft, 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 click, soft, soft. It's because of the way the gong is moving. Something we have no control over. I think it's just luck, really. I've tried to time my strokes. I've tried to do all kinds of things, and it's just luck is when you actually hit the gong. Okay, let's look at smaller mallets here. We'll take a real small, this is a medium yarn wound marimba mallet. Of course I'm going to get impact sound. Here's a cord wound vibe mallet. A medium rubber mallet. Here is a yarn wound, fairly hard mallet. This is an old Balter GM3. And these yarn ones, because they have a very small plane surface and they're fairly hard, they will get more articulation. You can definitely hear that. Versus something like this. This is a Peisty M4. Very different types of mallets. Sometimes you want this sound. Sometimes I want that sound with a little more articulation, because it brings out the higher frequencies more. Let's just listen to that again. Neither sound is better than the other. They're just different sounds. You might prefer one over the other. That's fine. I like them both. I think they fit in different situations and different types of rooms. Let's talk about room acoustics. My studio here, low ceiling, fairly compact, small room. The sound is very dry and compact. Go play your gongs in an old cathedral, a big church, lots of marble, wooden pews. Sound is very different. Go play your gongs in a yoga studio that has one wall that is all mirrors. And then it has maybe a tile, sort of a bamboo floor or hardwood floor. Very reflective in there. There are too many variables, again, in this whole equation of impact sound versus gong and versus the type of grip you use. Way too many variables. This brings up a story from years ago. It's probably 15, maybe 20 years ago. Somebody emailed me with a question. They said they had a gong and he wanted to know what kind of mallet to get to play softly. And my reply was, what mallets do you have? You can play soft with any mallet. It's just how you play. There's no such thing as a soft mallet. I mean, I can play softly even with this. It's going to have a little more impact sound, a little more articulation. But again, there's all these variables. So I could read more out of this. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that I totally disagree with. Talking about how gongs are not cymbals. And no, of course they're not cymbals. They're very different instruments. They vibrate differently. They are used differently. But gongs, I mean, whatever grip works for you, use it. Okay? If you want to play the Jens grip and do this, that is fine. Go ahead. If you want to play the thumbs on grip, play that way. And if you want to play straight on like this, or you want to play this, or this, or this, however you turn your, you could play this way, sort of the palm down, facing the gong, or this way. I mean, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. How are you built? How are your hands? How do they work? How does your arms work? How does your whole body stature work? Find what works for you. That is what's important. And don't worry so much about articulation, as I like to call it, impact sound, as they were saying. Sometimes it's desirable. And if you don't want it, get big puffy mallets, And if they're not soft enough, put more puff on there, put more fur or something over the mallets to make them softer. But also learn how to strike softly and how to come off the gong as opposed to into the gong. But even that, sometimes that's a desirable sort of sound. And before we finish here, drums, gongs. No, they're not the same instruments, but you can drum on gongs. I've been doing that for years. No one has ever complained about me playing a gong like a drum. No one has ever complained about that. And in fact, people have said they really liked the drumming part. And they didn't even realize I was playing a gong. Where is your drum? No, I didn't use a drum. Okay, that's it for today. Hopefully I don't have to talk about this again in the future, but use whatever grip works for you. Don't worry about the impact sound because it dissipates. Sometimes you want more of that, sometimes you want less of it. Choose your mallets accordingly and learn how to hit the gong differently. Hit it with a little more force, hit it with less force, hit it more off the gong, more into the gong. This subject I could talk for hours about, and I could demonstrate technique for hours and hours about all this. But suffice to say, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.